For nearly 2 centuries, the name John Deere stood for more than just machinery. It symbolized grit, self-reliance, and the heart of rural America. In the small towns that stretch across the Midwest, John Deere wasn't just a brand, it was part of the family. A name that echoed through generations of farmers who woke before sunrise, worked the soil with calloused hands, and counted on that signature green and yellow to keep their livelihood alive. But now, that trust has been shattered. John Deere has made a decision that many in rural America see as a betrayal, one that cuts deeper than just jobs lost. It's the kind of shift that signals a cultural fracture, the slow erosion of a way of life. Real quick, if you're into videos that cut through the noise and break things down clearly, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find this. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. We've got more deep dives coming your way. Also, drop a comment and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your take. Now on to the video. The shock came swiftly. In 2023, John Deere announced a wave of factory layoffs that stunned communities in Iowa and Illinois, long considered the brand's spiritual home. Over 4,500 jobs were cut. Entire departments vanished. For towns like Waterloo, Iowa, it was more than a headline. It was a personal tragedy. These weren't just numbers in a quarterly report. These were fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, friends and neighbors who had worked at the same plant for decades. Many had given their entire adult lives to the company. Some were second or third generation employees, following in the footsteps of family members who had built Deere's reputation with sweat, loyalty, and pride. The layoffs came with no ceremony, just letters, meetings, boxes on desks. Suddenly, the hum of factory machinery was replaced by silence and uncertainty. The people who built the tractors that fed the nation were now standing in unemployment lines, asking themselves the same haunting question: what happened? The immediate impact was brutal. Local diners that once bustled with pre-shift breakfast fell quiet. Hardware stores lost their regulars. Childcare centers and pharmacies saw fewer families walk through the door. Real estate markets slumped. Mortgage defaults ticked upward. One layoff doesn't just affect a household, it reverberates through the entire town. A former factory worker described the scene as a slow funeral, where everything around you is still standing, but it no longer feels alive. But perhaps the most damaging blow wasn't financial. It was emotional, the sense of betrayal. For decades, John Deere built its brand not just on engineering excellence, but on values, American values, community, stewardship, responsibility. These weren't just marketing slogans, they were lived experiences. Company leaders would speak about growing with farmers and never forgetting our roots. Now, those same executives were moving production to Mexico. To the people left behind, the message was clear. Profit came first, not loyalty, not legacy. Community leaders voiced their frustration publicly. Union representatives condemned the decision as short-sighted and greedy. Local churches held prayer services for affected families. And outside the shuttered factory gates, protest signs appeared. Deere doesn't care. Save our jobs. Built here. Dismantled there. The story even reached Washington. State officials called for investigations into the outsourcing. Congress members from Iowa and Illinois pressed for answers. Some even introduced legislation aimed at penalizing companies that took tax incentives and then moved jobs overseas. But for the people on the ground, legislation felt like too little, too late. This wasn't the first time rural America felt abandoned, but it was perhaps the most personal. John Deere wasn't a faceless tech company or distant retail chain. It was supposed to be theirs, a homegrown success story that understood the land, the lifestyle, the legacy, and now it was gone, or at least it was going. As the dust settled, a new question emerged, one even more haunting than the first. If John Deere can leave, who's next? And with that question lingering in the minds of thousands, the story moved from heartbreak to outrage. When word got out that John Deere was cutting thousands of American jobs and shifting production to Mexico, the backlash wasn't just local. It exploded onto the national stage. And at the center of the political firestorm was former President Donald Trump, who wasted no time turning the controversy into a rallying cry. At a campaign event packed with loyal supporters in rural Ohio, Trump took to the podium and launched into a scathing critique of the move. John Deere should be ashamed of themselves, he thundered. After everything this country has done for them, after all the hardworking farmers who kept that company alive, they shipped the jobs to Mexico? It's a disgrace, a total disgrace. The crowd erupted in cheers. It wasn't just rhetoric. Trump proposed a dramatic solution, a 200% tariff on all John Deere products manufactured in Mexico and imported back into the United States. It was one of the boldest trade proposals in recent memory, designed to hit the company where it hurt most, its profit margins. If they want to sell to Americans, Trump continued, they better make it in America, or they'll pay the price. The statement electrified his base. Conservative news outlets applauded the move, framing it as Trump once again standing up for the forgotten American worker. On talk radio and social media, the message spread like wildfire. Hashtags like #DearBetrayal and #Trump tariffs trended for days. To many in rural America, Trump's speech wasn't just politics, it was personal vindication. But not everyone was celebrating. Economists across the spectrum warned that the proposed tariff, while emotionally satisfying to some, could trigger unintended consequences. A 200% import tax would undoubtedly raise the price of John Deere equipment in the U.S., potentially pushing it out of reach for the very farmers Trump claimed to protect. It's a double-edged sword, one analyst wrote in Forbes. Yes, you punish John Deere, but you also punish American farmers, who now have to pay more for the tools they need. Wall Street didn't wait to see how things would play out. Deere & Company's stock price dropped sharply in after-hours trading, shedding over 1.5% of its value within minutes of Trump's speech. Investors, already nervous about supply chain instability and rising labor costs, now had another variable to contend with: political volatility. Behind closed doors, John Deere's executives scrambled. According to anonymous insiders, emergency meetings were called to assess the damage. Public relations teams crafted statements emphasizing the company's continued commitment to American workers. But the optics were already bad and getting worse. Meanwhile, the divide among farmers grew more complex. Some viewed Trump as a champion, standing up to corporate elites who had turned their backs on middle America. Others worried that more tariffs and trade wars would only make things harder. "We're already getting squeezed by falling crop prices," said one corn farmer from Illinois. "Now we might have to pay more for equipment too? It's like getting kicked while you're down." At the same time, Democrats seized the opportunity to criticize both Trump and Deere. Some pointed out that during his first term, Trump had presided over a trade war with China that hurt U.S. agriculture and contributed to declining exports. "This is déjà vu," one senator tweeted. "More tough talk, more economic pain for farmers." Still, the politics of outrage proved powerful. Protests outside Deere facilities began to attract not only laid-off workers, but also Trump supporters who had nothing to do with farming. For them, the issue wasn't just about tractors. It was about American jobs, corporate loyalty, and national identity. Signs like "Make Deere American Again" and "Build Tractors, Not Trade Deficits" began appearing at rallies. Some wondered if Trump's proposal was even enforceable. A 200% tariff would require congressional approval and could violate international trade agreements. But for the former president and his base, the legal hurdles were secondary. What mattered was the message: no more outsourcing, no more betrayal. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: John Deere's decision had transformed a business move into a political powder keg. And while Trump grabbed headlines, farmers themselves began making quiet but powerful moves of their own. A shift was coming. A rebellion. For decades, owning a John Deere tractor wasn't just a purchase. It was a badge of honor. A green and yellow symbol of trust, reliability, and tradition. Many farmers didn't even consider other brands. Their loyalty to Deere ran deep. Passed down from father to son, generation after generation. It was an emotional bond, built not just on performance but on heritage. But now, That relationship is unraveling. Across rural America, a quiet rebellion is taking root. Farmers who once swore by John Deere are walking away. Some are switching to competitors. Others are refusing to upgrade their equipment altogether. The reason? It's not just about jobs. It's about control. At the heart of the backlash is something called the right to repair movement, an issue that has become a lightning rod for farmers everywhere. As John Deere's technology has advanced, so too has its grip on how that technology can be used. Today's tractors are no longer just machines, they're computers on wheels, and they're locked tight. Modern John Deere equipment comes embedded with proprietary software that restricts who can access the systems needed for even basic repairs. Farmers who once carried toolboxes and spare parts are now being told they need an authorized technician just to clear a software error or replace a sensor. In some cases, a minor issue can render an entire machine inoperable until it's diagnosed and reset at a dealership. For many farmers, this isn't just frustrating, it's infuriating. "I paid $400,000 for that combine," one Kansas farmer said. "And you're telling me I can't fix it? That I need to wait 3 days for some guy to plug in a laptop and charge me $800 to tell me what I already know? That's robbery." And that sentiment is spreading. Farmers across the Midwest have begun organizing, pushing for legal reforms that would grant them the right to access the diagnostic tools and software necessary to maintain their own equipment. In Nebraska, Iowa, and even California, lawsuits and legislative proposals have taken aim at John Deere's repair restrictions. The issue has drawn support from unlikely allies, libertarians, tech activists, even some bipartisan lawmakers. In 2022, New York passed the first U.S. law requiring companies to provide repair tools and manuals to independent shops. Other states are following suit. John Deere, for its part, has pushed back. The company argues that unlocking proprietary software could compromise safety, environmental compliance, and even intellectual property. Critics, however, say it's about money. More control over repairs means more revenue for dealerships. And in many rural areas, those dealerships are few and far between, leaving farmers with long wait times and high bills. This fight over control has struck a nerve. Farmers by nature are self-reliant. They fix fences, rebuild engines, weld broken equipment in their barns. Telling them they're not qualified to repair their own tractor isn't just offensive, it's insulting. It's also driving them into the arms of competitors. Some are turning to older machines, pre-software era models that can still be repaired with basic tools. Others are exploring alternative brands that allow more flexibility. And increasingly, a new player is entering the conversation: Chinese-made farm machinery, which we'll cover in detail in the next section. But the damage to Deere's reputation is already done. Forums, once filled with glowing praise, are now laced with frustration. YouTube is full of videos titled things like "Why I'll Never Buy John Deere Again" or "Deere's Dirty Secret." Even within farming expos and agricultural fairs, conversations have shifted. It's no longer just about horsepower or yield, it's about freedom. Who controls your machine? Who owns your data? John Deere once represented the backbone of American agriculture. Now, to many, it represents corporate overreach. A faceless entity that cares more about software licenses than the families who rely on their equipment to put food on the table. And that shift in perception could be more damaging than any financial loss. Because in rural America, trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. As American farmers began turning their backs on John Deere, another force was quietly gaining momentum. Thousands of miles away on factory floors in China, a new wave of agricultural machinery was being assembled. Cheap, repairable, and tailor-made to disrupt the market that Deere once dominated. Enter China's agricultural equipment manufacturers. Companies like YTO Group, Zoomlion, and Photon Lavol aren't household names in the U.S. yet. But globally, they're rising fast. These Chinese brands have already established a strong presence in parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe. And now, with the cracks in Deere's reputation widening, they're making their move into American soil. Not with flashy marketing campaigns, but with something far more enticing to struggling farmers: affordability and freedom. Let's talk numbers. A mid-sized John Deere tractor can cost upwards of $300,000. Its Chinese counterpart, sometimes as little as $80,000, less than a third of the price. And while Deere's machines might boast advanced GPS tracking and software-driven precision farming capabilities, the reality is that many small to mid-sized farms don't need or can't afford those features. They want machinery that gets the job done, doesn't require a PhD to fix, and won't bankrupt them. That's exactly what Chinese brands offer. Stripped of proprietary software locks and engineered for easy maintenance, these machines are winning over farmers who value practicality over prestige. In interviews across farming communities in Texas, Iowa, and Kansas, a growing number of farmers admit to considering or already owning Chinese-made tractors. Some are even bypassing American dealers altogether, opting instead to import machines directly or work with small-scale importers who specialize in agricultural equipment. "I just need something that works," said a soybean farmer in Missouri. "If it breaks, I want to fix it. I don't care if it doesn't say John Deere on the side." This shift isn't just anecdotal. U.S. Customs data reveals a noticeable uptick in Chinese agricultural machinery imports since 2022. Trade reports show Chinese manufacturers aggressively expanding their sales and distribution efforts, setting up footholds in Latin America, Canada, and now eyeing the U.S. market. Their strategy is clear: fill the void left by Deere's high prices and restrictive policies. And the appeal goes beyond price and repairability. Chinese tractors are modular, meaning they can be customized with off-the-shelf parts. Farmers can choose which attachments they want, upgrade components easily, and most importantly, repair them in-house. For American farmers who've grown tired of the waiting lists and inflated service costs at John Deere dealerships, this is a breath of fresh air. Still, there's skepticism. Critics argue that Chinese machinery doesn't have the same build quality or longevity as American brands. Concerns about warranty, parts availability, and after-sales service are valid. But to many farmers operating on razor-thin margins, those risks are worth taking, especially when the alternative is financial ruin. There's also a geopolitical twist to this story. As tensions between the U.S. and China simmer, the idea of relying on Chinese-made equipment feels uncomfortable to some. But in the fields, practicality often trumps politics. "We don't have the luxury of playing patriot," said one farmer. "We're trying to survive." Meanwhile, John Deere's leadership insists that its innovations and brand loyalty will weather the storm. In a recent shareholder call, the company downplayed the threat of foreign competition, but the numbers suggest otherwise. Deere's market share in entry-level and mid-range machinery has started to slip, and the more they double down on high-tech, premium-priced models, the wider the opening for budget-friendly imports becomes. To add salt to the wound, some farmers have begun posting side-by-side comparisons of Deere and Chinese models on TikTok and YouTube, highlighting not just the price differences, but the ease of use and repair. One viral video titled, "I switched from John Deere to China. Here's what happened," garnered over 1 million views in less than a week. It's not just a trend, it's a warning. If Deere continues to alienate its base, it risks becoming a legacy brand that priced itself out of relevance. Because in a world where profits are down, tariffs are up, and trust is eroding, the cheapest option that works becomes king. While John Deere grapples with declining trust and rising competition, farmers themselves are battling a far more immediate threat, a full-blown collapse in crop prices. And it's this collapse, more than tariffs or brand loyalty, that may ultimately determine the future of American farming and the machines that fuel it. Since 2022, commodity prices have been on a disturbing downward trend. Corn has plummeted by 37%, soybeans by 24%, and wheat by 35%. These aren't just small fluctuations, they're seismic shifts that have wiped out billions in potential revenue. For farmers who survive on tight margins, a 5% drop can mean the difference between breaking even and going under. A 30% collapse? That's devastation. The reasons behind the price plunge are complex, but much of it can be traced to a massive global shift in agricultural power. Once upon a time, China was one of the biggest importers of American grain, but in the last few years, that dynamic has changed dramatically. The Chinese government, eager to reduce its dependency on U.S. agriculture amid trade tensions and geopolitical volatility, has been pouring billions into its own domestic farming sector. Using state-sponsored subsidies, tech-enhanced growing methods, and massive land reform initiatives, China has dramatically scaled up its internal food production. The result? Less need for American crops. And with one of their biggest customers scaling back purchases, U.S. farmers are left with a problem: surplus supply and no one to sell to. It's basic economics. Too much product and not enough demand equals falling prices. And when prices fall, confidence follows. Farmers are now hesitant to invest in new machinery even when they need it. Tractors are aging. Harvesters are running on borrowed time. But making a six-figure purchase when your crop is selling at a 30% discount is financial suicide. Many are choosing to repair what they have, even if it means running outdated or inefficient equipment for another season. This hesitation is crippling companies like John Deere, whose business model partially depends on farmers upgrading their machines every few years. That cycle has stalled. The once reliable stream of purchases has slowed to a trickle. And with it, Deere's domestic revenue projections are tumbling. But the crisis doesn't stop there. The cost of farming hasn't dropped with prices. In fact, the opposite is true. Fertilizer prices are up. Diesel fuel is up. Labor costs are up. Add in lingering supply chain issues from the pandemic, and farmers are being hit from both sides: rising input costs and shrinking profits. For smaller farms, the math no longer adds up. In places like Indiana and Nebraska, families are putting land up for sale, sometimes land that's been in the family for generations. Others are taking on crushing debt to stay afloat, refinancing equipment loans and mortgaging property just to get through harvest. It's a dangerous spiral. Debt leads to stress. Stress leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions lead to failure. And in rural America, failure doesn't just affect the farmer. It affects the feed stores, the seed suppliers, the local mechanics, and the diners where deals used to be made over black coffee and eggs at 5 a.m. This is the environment John Deere now finds itself in: a market of reluctant buyers, rising foreign alternatives, and a customer base with increasingly empty wallets. And yet, Deere's leadership is charging forward with bold ambition. Instead of adapting to the financial realities on the ground, the company is doubling down on its most expensive, cutting-edge products: autonomous tractors, AI-powered harvesters, smart planting systems that require an internet connection and a software license to operate. These innovations are impressive, but for many farmers, they're simply unreachable. It's like selling Teslas to people who can't afford gas, one Iowa farmer said. There's a growing belief that John Deere is out of touch, more focused on Silicon Valley innovation than Midwestern necessity. And as the price of corn collapses, so too does the patience of those who once wore Deere hats with pride. The agricultural sector is entering a new era, one where every penny counts, every decision is scrutinized, and brand loyalty is no longer guaranteed. In a time of economic uncertainty and farmer unrest, John Deere is making what may be the boldest and riskiest move in its 187-year history: a full-throttle push into automation. While traditional farmers are tightening their belts and struggling to stay afloat, Deere's executives are placing their bets on a future without drivers, a farming world powered by artificial intelligence, GPS-guided systems, and robotic equipment that never takes a lunch break. It's a vision that looks like something out of Silicon Valley rather than the heartland. But not everyone is buying it. Over the past few years, John Deere has poured billions of dollars into developing autonomous tractors, robotic harvesters, and machine learning platforms that promise to revolutionize agriculture. Their crown jewel, the autonomous 8R tractor, unveiled in 2022, a machine capable of plowing, planting, and tilling without a human behind the wheel. It's equipped with 360-degree cameras, AI-powered navigation, and real-time data collection tools that can detect soil conditions on the fly. The company claims this innovation will transform farming as we know it. They argue that automation solves three major problems: labor shortages, inefficiency, and rising operational costs. And to some extent, they're right on paper. Large-scale industrial farms, the kinds operated by massive agribusinesses, are already embracing these high-tech machines. They can afford to. For them, automation is a way to boost yields, reduce workforce dependency, and stay competitive in a global marketplace. A single autonomous machine can do the work of multiple human operators, all while running longer hours and collecting valuable data that informs future planning strategies. But while corporate farms are preparing for an automated future, family-run operations feel increasingly left behind. To start, the cost is staggering. Deere's autonomous tractor costs upwards of $500,000, and that's before you factor in the infrastructure upgrades needed to support it. Stable internet connectivity, data subscriptions, and compatible software platforms. For small farms already reeling from collapsing crop prices and rising debt, that kind of investment isn't just impractical, it's impossible. "Who are they building this for?" asked one farmer in North Dakota. "Because it sure as hell isn't for folks like me." Even more troubling is the cultural gap that's emerging. Farming, for many rural families, isn't just a business. It's a way of life, a deeply human craft passed down through generations. The transition to driverless tractors and algorithm-based decision-making isn't just a technological leap, it's a philosophical one. It represents the industrialization of a lifestyle rooted in independence, experience, and tradition. Critics argue that Deere is alienating its core customer base, the very people who made the brand iconic in the first place. They accuse the company of chasing tech headlines and Silicon Valley valuation models while forgetting who they're actually supposed to serve. Deere, for its part, maintains that the long-term benefits of automation will trickle down to farms of all sizes. They point to software updates and subscription models that could make AI farming more accessible in the future. But accessibility doesn't pay the bills. Farmers want tools they can afford today, not dreams of efficiency a decade down the line. And then there's the issue of control, a recurring theme in Deere's recent controversies. Just like the backlash over repair restrictions, Deere's automation systems come with locked-down software and digital rights management. That means farmers can't tinker, fix, or upgrade the AI tools without going through the company or its approved partners. It's a future where you don't own your equipment. You rent it, even if you paid $500,000 for it. This isn't a hypothetical concern. In fact, it's already happened. Some farmers report being locked out of their equipment during critical harvest windows because of software bugs or expired subscriptions. Others have found themselves reliant on remote support teams based in cities they've never heard of, all while their crops wait in the fields. This growing dependence on centralized technology runs counter to everything rural farmers value: self-reliance, resilience, and the ability to get the job done when no one else is around. And yet, Deere seems undeterred. The company has announced plans to expand its automation division, double down on R&D, and even partner with Silicon Valley tech firms to further enhance its AI capabilities. The vision is clear: fewer humans, more machines. But whether that vision aligns with the needs of real-world farmers remains to be seen. Because in the rush to embrace innovation, John Deere may be forgetting a fundamental truth: technology without trust won't sow loyalty. It will reap resentment. What began as a corporate restructuring decision has erupted into something far more consequential: a reckoning for American agriculture. In just a few years, John Deere has gone from being a trusted symbol of rural resilience to a lightning rod for controversy, division, and unrest. Its decision to shift jobs to Mexico didn't just trigger layoffs. It tore open old wounds and exposed the fragility of America's rural economy. We've seen how mass layoffs shattered communities in Iowa and Illinois, how farmers, once fiercely loyal, now feel betrayed, how Trump's fiery response turned a business story into a full-blown political crisis. We've followed the rise of Chinese farm machinery, the impact of crashing crop prices, and the growing gulf between corporate farming giants and family run farms. Through it all, one question has lingered: who is the future of farming really for? If you ask John Deere's executives, they'll point to automation, artificial intelligence, and innovation. They'll talk about efficiency and scalability. But if you ask the farmers, the ones in the fields before dawn, the ones scraping by on razor-thin margins, the answer is different. They want tools they can afford, machines they can fix, policies that don't leave them behind. This isn't just about tractors. It's about ownership, dignity, and the slow erosion of a way of life. It's about whether the people who feed the nation will continue to have a seat at the table or be replaced by algorithms, corporations, and global trade winds beyond their control. American farming is at a crossroads. One path leads to further consolidation, fewer farms, bigger machines, and deeper dependence on multinational giants. The other path is harder, but it leads to resilience. A system where farmers have choices, support, and the freedom to farm on their own terms. John Deere's story is still being written. The decisions it makes in the next few years about pricing, repair rights, manufacturing, and customer relationships will determine whether it remains an American icon or fades into a cautionary tale. But this story isn't just Deere's, it's ours. The fate of rural America, the soul of independent agriculture, and the backbone of the food system we all rely on. It's all on the line. So, what do you think? Is John Deere making a necessary business decision to survive in a global economy? Or is it abandoning the very communities that built it? Should America embrace automation and globalization or fight to preserve the values of independence, craftsmanship, and local control? Once again, thanks for watching this video. If you got something out of this, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Agree, disagree, or something in between. I'd love to hear it.